So here I am with notes in hand, about to start to type away for the post that I wanted to put out today. And I decided that I wanted to do a video and be present with you instead. So this is a really, different thing for me because normally I'm either writing or perhaps doing some audio. But today it was really important to me on this particular topic to be able to be present with you. It's a topic that is around the part of the One Living System that asks us to begin to turn inwards towards ourselves. And so, in honor of that, I wanted to be really present with you to be able to talk about that. So, I thought I would just read through my notes and be able to kind of just expand on them as I go, and again take the time and the opportunity to really be present around it. So many people have already been doing the work, and the work is simply the turning toward the self, right? And turning toward what we carry that has shaped us, that has carved us, that has allowed us to become who we are today. And all of this, the people who have done the work, the people who are just starting the work, what it asks of us is that until now, we've done that work through meditations or through therapy or through art or through drawing or through listening. We've done it through so many avenues, and all of it has been bracketed into being called self-help. And I just want to express that I find such an issue with that. I think self-help actually identifies something really important, right? The very phrase self-help actually says something about the world we've been living in up until now. Help was needed because separation had occurred. And if you reflect back on some of the posts that I've just been placing around separation and isolation, self-help was there to try to ease that separation as a term, right? Like, you need self-help. And so the self, all this time, has been treated as separate from that which we belong to, and something that needed to be fixed or needed to be improved, or we needed to be managed or even to be healed, because we were separated from that which we belong to. This doesn't make the work wrong, everything we've already done wrong, but it absolutely makes it incomplete, right? It's been necessary, it's been courageous, it's brought us to this moment, but it's been so incomplete when we are separated from that which we belong to. And what it does is it has really provided a limit to the framework that we've been able to discover ourselves in. One of the things that's really evident in the One Living System book is right from the start, we follow through a lemniscate, and that infinity swirl that really beautifully highlights the living system shows us that as we learn and we grow, we live into that, and we live into that experience. There's a part of it, one of the pictures in the book really highlights how humanity has been really separated from nature and all else, that we have never been included as one. And therefore, the framework for this help has been simply outside of everything that we belong to. So the help that was required came because of the separation. And we need to remember that. The separated self cannot fully find itself, right? This is one of the things that I've written down. It's one of the most important places for us to actually pause on, because everybody has, in a way, been led to believe that the help they require and the level of help they require and the length of time they require this help is about them. And yet, when you take it back and understand that the separation has come through the system we've been a part of, it was never really about us. It was about the system that we were led through, the separation and the isolation that we were given, that made us require the help to return to it. The self can never be truly found in its separated form because it can only be found within its wholeness, within its whole self. So if we only look at ourselves as isolated individuals, we can only ever find that part of the truth. So we've been feeding back into ourselves constantly, right? Like the self we've been trying to find has been this small, limited version of who we are. And we've wanted that to have all the answers, and it hasn't had all the answers. We may understand our patterns, our wounds, our stories and behaviours, but we may still not understand our place in life, or our truth in life, or our purpose in life, or our meaning in life, because we're doing it from that separated space. The separated self can be analysed, it can be improved and named, but wholeness asks for so much more than that. We cannot become whole by studying ourselves as though we are separated from life. So the One Living System invites us as the self back into the living field. It does not dismiss any of the work we've already done. It doesn't say that all that we've come to know is not true. It just brings it to a larger field. It takes us to see that the self is not outside the living system. The self is not separate from relationship, from place, from body, from ancestry, from memory, from ecology, from the river, from culture, from breath, land, or life itself. And the thing is that none of us have ever been truly invited into this work in that way. We've only ever known the work and been invited to step into that work from a separated perspective, from this self outside of living system perspective. And the living system is saying, let's step back into the living field of life through our wholeness so that we can actually find the truth of all that we are. So there is a shift from self as isolated project to self as living system. And so the first part of that we discover in all the field companions that we are working through with the One Living System. Once we've done the work to understand the living system, the first thing that we are called to do is see self as living system. And this is both a free download, which doesn't look like this, but comes as a free download, or you can purchase, the workbooks to be able to work your way through understanding who is this self as a living system. So the first movement asks us to observe life's living system again, right? And then we begin by seeing the patterns of life, the relationships that are there, the reciprocity, the rhythm, and the belonging, right? Like so much of us hold disconnect from belonging in part because we've been separated and isolated by the other system. The living system is saying you belong here with all of us. There is in amongst that creation and oneness and wholeness, and it calls a return to that. We remember that life is not a backdrop to human existence, right? Like we're not meant to be in the picture as individuals, as separated beings. We're in the picture as a wholeness, as one form of life, all of life. Life is the field we are already living within, and seeing this prepares us for what comes next. So once we actually recognize ourselves as a living system, as a part of all of that, and we start to do the work of understanding, hang on, the me that I want to know is not the separated self. It's not this separated individual being. It's a part of this enormous wholeness that is life. So the next part is really seeing ourselves again. Once we begin to see life as a living system, we then turn and see ourselves really differently, right? Because we don't see ourselves just as human form in a way. We recognize ourselves as an expression of life. We look at all that we carry and all that we are, and we realize that the separated self is only a partial form of that truth, of our truth. And we cannot truly find all that we are until we see ourselves as a part of that living system. So that's where the self as living system really begins, and then it expands to being able to say the self is not outside the system looking in. The self is an expression of life inside the living system itself. And that's where we come to the next part, which is all about knowing your sacred self. Like, we all understand that life's sacred, but we see ourselves separate to that. But we are a part of life and part of life's expression. And so knowing ourselves as a part of the sacredness of life itself, in that realization comes the knowing the sacred self. Sacred self is not an ego, it's not an identity, or it's not a display, and it's not self-importance. It's the recognition that the self belongs to life. It's the small remembered, it's the self remembered through the wholeness, right? Through the whole living system, not as a separated being. And it asks us to do the work to become whole again by returning to our place amongst the system, the living system of life, and recognizing ourselves for the first time. And in that, you know, as a counselor, one of the big things, you know, I work with people so much is around, you know, where's my meaning, where's my purpose? And as separated individuals that struggle to find a place to belong, struggle to find our truth, that struggles with stillness and capacity to be a part of things, all of a sudden when we realize that it's coming from that separated space, we were never able to truly find all that we are. But the minute we step back in and recognize ourselves as a part of the living system, as a part of all of life, we realize that we all have deep purpose and deep meaning to life, that we are all as important as the beetle, as the river, as the wind, that we too carry message and connection and relationship with everything else that's around us. And what that means practically is that the work isn't about abandoning the self. It's not a bypass. It's not a way to avoid pain. It's not a way to avoid history or trauma, identity, or any lived experience, right? It's not saying step away from any of this. It's to hold all of that in a much larger field. One cannot carry all of that. The wounding of life itself is not carried by one piece. The whole of life, the whole of the living system carries all its wounds, all of its creations, all of its treasures, and we are a part of that. And once we step back in and return to that, there's so much more ease in our becoming. It asks us not only what am I carrying and how does it belong to the whole, it says where have I mistaken separation to be true? It says how do I return myself to relationship with life? How do I do this work that allows me to see myself as sacred and one? So this Sunday from the Heart is not a demand to fix ourselves. It's an invitation just for us to pause. It's Sunday. Stop and take a breath and see ourselves more truthfully. The work of understanding and knowing and loving self doesn't stop. It just is being asked to change its ground. It moves from self-help to self-remembering. It's a return to all that we actually deeply know, all that we are. And it moves us from separated being to whole being. It allows us to see ourselves as wholeness, which is so vital in all of our healing. It moves from who am I as a separate being to how am I life living as an expression of life, as a part of life, as a part of this sacredness. How am I expressing and giving and offering myself as part of life? So this is where the next part of the journey begins, right? Not with becoming something more, but with remembering that we have never, ever been outside life. So that's my pause for today. It's a pause to be able to say, how can we recognize our wholeness, release ourselves from seeking this separated self, and really truly step in and do the work of discovering the sacredness that we truly are. Much love to you all, and thank you for being here.